Hello, everyone. This is Tiffany Brown with the Speak Up and Inspire podcast, and I have my co host, Mandre Davis, with us today. And we have one of our Maryland partners with us, Miss Rene Michelle. We are going to be listening to her story. She said that she had to set the record straight from our last time speaking. She wanted to, share a little bit more. And so we have dedicated this interview to learning more about Miss Rene, her
Yes,
story,
ma'am.
her efforts, and what she is doing right now to be a change maker in her community. So, Miss
Yeah.
Renee, hello, hello, and welcome to the Speak Up and Inspire podcast.
Hey,
I'm so happy to be back. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can hear you.
we hear you. Yes, ma'am.
Alrighty, great. So yeah, Tiffany, I went home and I was already at home and I thought about it and I was like, wait a
All right.
minute, I
We
just
got some technical difficulties with these satellites today.
Okay, go ahead, Renee. I
okay.
muted him. Go ahead.
Okay. So what I was saying to myself, I just felt like I did not accomplish what I wanted to accomplish when I spoke that day. So I wanted to share
There we go.
my story. Um,
Ladies and gentlemen, we're having some technical difficulties. While we're waiting for the rest of the crew to be able to click back in, just want to.
Okay, we're going to be doing this interview just me and you because he's having technical difficulties.
okay.
All right, go ahead.
So, well, what I wanted to do was basically share with everybody my story. And so some people have heard it, some people haven't, but I want to start. Normally, when I do share my story, I like to share about my childhood so everybody could have a better understanding on how um, everything that happened to me and why I moved the way that I do. Um, as a child, as early as 5 is what I can remember, I was molested by several family members. At the ages of 11, 14, and 26, I was raped. Um, I eventually met a young man who I thought was going to save me from all my pain, hurt, and trauma. I thought he was going to be my knight in shining armor, and he ended up being more like a nightmare. He was very nice in the beginning. He was a gentleman. He held the door. He said all the right things. He did all the right things. Then, after a short period of time, maybe about a 2 month period, I started noticing changes in him. Um, and I want you all to pay close attention to some of the things I'm about to mention to you because they're signs of an abusive personality. He started becoming verbally, mentally, and emotionally abusive to me. And then eventually the physical abuse came in. Um, I actually can remember the very first time that he hit me as if it was yesterday. I told him I wanted to go to the store and he told me to go ahead and come right back, which was very unusual because I literally could not go anywhere without this man. It was so bad that he scheduled his work around my work so that he could come and sit in my job and watch me. And if anyone I managed the restaurant and lounge. If anyone talked to me longer than he thought that they should, then he would start a physical altercation with them. It got to the point where he was barred from my job. He then started calling my job and telling me to leave the phone off the hook so he could hear everything that was going on. Needless to say, that didn't last. He then started coming back up to my job and he would stand outside and wait for me to get off. All of these things are happening, and you would think that I would see some type of red flag or some signs or anything, but I didn't because what I failed to mention to you as well is that I'm a second generation domestic abuse survivor as well. I grew up watching my father abuse my mother for many years. So you would think that I would see something, and I didn't. Um, he, I went to the store. It took me about 15, 20 minutes tops to go to the store and come back. When I get back from the store, I knock on the door where he stayed with his sister, his brother-in-law, and their twins, who were 5 at the time. I knocked on the door. He opened the door and he immediately grabbed me by my hair and he drugged me past his sister, his brother-in-law, and their twins as they sat and watched television into the room where he slept, and he began beating me. he beat me bloody. And when he finished beating me, he grabbed me by my hair and he stood me up and he turned me around and he looked at me and he said, "You know you're not leaving me, right?" And at this point, out of fear, I said no. He said, "Good, because if you do, this is what's going to happen." He took a gun and he put it to my head and he pulled the trigger. At that point, he began making Russian roulette a regular part of my life to keep me in fear, and it worked. When I say everything that this man told me to do, I did it. It was like I was no longer Rene. I was just like a robot or something. So now the cat's out the bag. You know, I see him for who he really is. So the beatings and everything continued. They got worse. It got to the point where he literally told me that if I left him, that he would kill me. If I got my family involved, that he would not only kill me, but he would kill them. And if I called the police, that he would kill me. So those were my warnings. It got to the point where one day we were out. We went to Union Station, and normally with him, everything could be just fine, and then all of a sudden it was like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So this particular day we went to Union Station, we caught the bus there, and we did some shopping and everything. So we're on the way back, and I have a bag with some boots in it and another bag in my hand. He gets off the bus ahead of me and starts walking in front of me, and I'm walking behind. Some guy tries to talk to me, so he turns around and he says, you know, he sees the guy talking to me. I'm trying to tell the guy, like, you know, please, you know, no. So he runs back to me and the guy, and he says, why are you trying to talk to my girl or whatever? So the guy's like, well, how am I supposed to know this your girl and you walking 10 feet ahead of her? At this point, the only thing that I could think to do was run, because I knew what was getting ready to happen to me. So I tried to run. He chased me. He grabbed the bag of boots out of my hand and he literally drew back and hit me in my head so hard till I saw stars. And you know how, I don't know if anybody has ever had that happen where you literally see stars. It happened to me. I shook it off and I ran to the guy in the booth and I said to him, please call the police. My boyfriend is beating me. He runs up behind me and says to the guy, don't listen to her. She forgot to take her medication today. The guy's looking at me and looking at him like he's trying to decide who to believe. And I said, sir, if you don't call the police, then you're going to be responsible if something happens to me. Please. I begged him. And he said, look, dude, if you're going to leave, because I'm calling the police. So he did. He called the police. Needless to say, my aunt beat the police there. So I left. But as far as he was concerned, I called the police on him. And that was violation number one. So at this point, I don't see him, you know, for one day goes by and I'm literally coming from work. I worked in a restaurant lounge. So at night, I come into my apartment and I look around my apartment in each room to make sure, because he used to break into my apartment to see if he was there. The first night, the coast was clear. The second night, the coast was clear. The third night, I do my regular routine. I'm looking around my house and everything. I get back to my bedroom. I open my bedroom door and there he was kneeling with candles lit around my room, on my dresser, everything, and the gun sitting on my dresser. He's begging and pleading with me and apologizing and telling me he's so sorry and he loves me and he will never do it again and all this. The only thing that I could think to myself was, do whatever he says. Do whatever he says if you want to live. So I did whatever he told me to do. I did it that night. The one thing that I did do that I wasn't used to doing was praying, because you see, I didn't have much faith in God, because I was like, where was God when I was a child being molested? all my life? Where was God when I was being raped? And where is God now? So I didn't have much faith in God. But what little faith I had, that night I prayed to God and I told him, I asked him, please get me out of this situation alive. I was specific. I said, get me out of this situation alive, and I promise you I will do anything. I prayed. I did not sleep that night. The following day, I happened to be sitting in his window, which was diagonally across the walkway from mine. And mind you, for a year and a half, I didn't have visitors. When I say with domestic violence, isolation is real, no one came around. For a year and a half, I didn't have any visitors. So I'm sitting in his window and I look out and I see two females at my door, knocking at my door. And I said, oh my God. He's in the bathroom. And I said to him, I'm going to run to my apartment and I'll be right back. Again, he said, go ahead and come right back, which was unusual. We went everywhere together. When I say I ran like a freed slave, by the time I got over there, they were in the car getting ready to pull off. I ran to the car. I banged on the window. And at that point, I realized it was two of my cousins that I hadn't seen in over a year and a half. I said, don't ask any questions. Grab anything that looks important and run. We literally ran into my apartment. We each grabbed a handful of my clothing and I ran for my life. And I didn't look back, but when I left, I didn't leave alone. I eventually found out I was pregnant by my abuser. I now have a beautiful 32-year-old daughter by my abuser. And as I come before you today, I suffer with grand mal epileptic seizures due to blows to my head at the hands of my abuser. But I'm alive. Mm-hmm. I'm alive. And I know it's not for nothing, because you see, that day when I was flown away to Baltimore shock trauma, I had 6 seizures in a row. They literally lost me on the helicopter. And I know for a fact they resuscitated me. Obviously, I'm here. But I know for a fact that God did not blow air into my lungs, back into my lungs, for me to sit back and be quiet about everything that had happened to me in my life. Mm-hmm. So at that point, I was like, I have to say something. I was quiet. I held in all of my rape, all of my molestation, all of my pain from the age of 5 all the way up to that point. And at that point, I said, I have to say something. What I did was I got on to Facebook, and I never had a group or anything. But I started the group that night. I just figured it out. God, okay. And it's called Domestic Violence Love Don't Hurt. That was what I came up with.
All right.
I literally got on there for the first time ever in life and shared everything that happened to me from the age of 5 up until that point, mm-hmm. on that page that night. And people were in shock. People that knew me, people that didn't know me were writing me. That's how I met Queen Affy. That's how I started meeting. When I shared my story, everyone started bombarding me with coming on their radio shows and sharing. And that's how I started in 2012 sharing. And at that point was where healing began. Just getting all of that mess off of me from the age of 5. I held all of that. And to release it all.
This is an incredible story.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
It's just straight overcoming and adapting, moving on instinct and just reaching out in faith. Yeah. And this is just incredible.
And let me say this.
Wow.
Thank you so much.
And if she hadn't told her story, there's no telling how many people that she's reaching right now with this. This is just amazing.
I pray I do. But I want to say this part, though. Remember when I said that I didn't have much faith in God? And I said,
I'm spellbound.
I was like, where was God? Where was God when I was being molested? Where was God when I was being raped? Where is he now? I finally figured it out. He was carrying me. He was carrying that little 5-year-old girl. He was carrying that 14, that 11-year-old. He carried me through all of that mess so I could be sitting right here today to help whomever it is. My cousin Shay, who was beaten, shot 3 times, and bludgeoned to death. I'm her voice. My mother, who was beaten for 17 years, who is still silent to this day, I'm her voice. I'm the voice for any woman, man, child that has not been strong enough and able to speak and share their story. I'm your voice. I am your voice. And that day when I told God that if he got me out of that situation alive, I would do anything. He kept his promise to me. So I've been keeping my promise to him ever since. And that's exactly why I've been doing everything that I have been doing. I am a national advocate against domestic violence and sexual assault. I'm a best-selling author. I have 3 books that are on Amazon, all pertaining to my story. I've done several movies, playing myself, Rene Michelle Advocate. I have spoken at the House of Delegates. I've helped to contribute to get bills passed against domestic violence. I was requested to come to the White House by Vice President Biden. But you know, I've spoken at about every school, high school, um,
Renee, you're breaking up. We can't hear you now.
okay. Can you hear me at all?
Yeah,
You
we
can hear
can
me?
now. Mm-hmm.
Okay. What I had said was I've spoken in just about every high school in the DC and PG County area. Thanks to Queen Afee. She has helped to get me to, where I can speak to the children, where it's definitely needed the most at. But as I mentioned to you earlier, I didn't have much faith in God, but believe me now, he is my everything. And I know, like I said, that he carried me through all of that mess. And I know for a fact that I would not have been able to deal with it, or come and be without him. So, that's basically, I mean, I have a lot, I have a lot going on. I have my own podcast called Rene Michelle Unstuck. I have my book that's coming out, hopefully and prayerfully it'll be out October of this year. I'm doing a lot. I'm happy to be on this tour with you.
We are so happy to have you. We really are.
Once again, you are wonderful. You are a blessing, and this was one. And it's just a beautiful thing. And we as a team, we're gonna do this and much more. But I'm excited about everything that God has planned for me that I know of and that I don't, because I said that I know for a fact that God did not put me on this earth. When he put me in my mother's womb, he already knew what I was going to endure. Right. He knew what the plan was. Mm-hmm. My mom didn't, and neither did I. But the fact that I was strong enough, that I still have all my faculties after being everything that I've endured, that's but God.
Yeah.
Nobody. No, it's nothing but God. I still have love in my heart. I'm not angry. I'm not bitter, or any of that. That's God.
Yeah.
It can't be anybody but him. Now, don't get me wrong. I wish death at one point on him. Every time I had a seizure, I had grand mal epileptic seizures. where you shake and you bite.
Yeah.
Every time I had one, I literally wish death on this man
Mm-hmm.
because he caused this. He caused me to have these seizures. And then I grew up, and then I started healing,
Mm-hmm.
and I had to forgive him. And also, he's my daughter's father. And just like my father, I had to forgive because I was my daughter. My father was a horrible husband, but he was a great father. My daughter's father was a horrible boyfriend. He was a great father. Never did I ever mention anything negative. My daughter grew up watching me have grand mal epileptic seizures, and she never knew where they came from.
Mm.
When she turned 18, I slipped up because I found out that her father was talking negative. She eventually got to meet her father, her aunts, her family. And her father started talking negatively about me to my child.
Mm.
My daughter mentioned it to me, and I was livid. And I just burst. I just came out and said, so you're sitting here saying all these negative things about me to our child. Did you tell her that you're the reason I have epilepsy? And I said,
Yeah.
oh. And my daughter said, what? She said, what did you say, mommy? I said, I did not want her to know that, but I was so angry and it just came
Right.
out. But I believe everything happens for a reason. She was 18.
Mm-hmm.
She was
Yeah.
good enough to deal with it.
Yeah.
Although it hurt her,
Mm-hmm.
she handled it very well. She didn't talk to her father for a while, but I
Mm-hmm.
sat my child down and I said to her, has your father ever hurt you? Has he ever hit you? Has he ever said anything mean to you or did anything wrong to you? No, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
I said, that your father, I chose your father as a boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have a choice in him being your father.
Right.
And he's a great father. I just picked the wrong boyfriend for me.
Yeah.
So I can't tell you how to move from this point on. Just know that that's your father still. And regardless of what we had, it had nothing to do with you. I chose him.
Right.
So from that point on, for a while, she didn't talk to him because I literally was driving through the Baltimore doing 100 miles an hour to get my kids to safety. She saw all of this.
Right.
And it hurt her because her dad was the cause of it.
Right.
But I sat her down and I talked to her, like I said, and eventually she started speaking to her father again. And they build their relationship, more. And I thank God because last murdered, he was found dead.
Mm.
Still don't know, they don't know.
Mm.
I don't know what happened either. So I can't speak on it, but he was found dead.
Mm.
And I'm glad that she was able to build a relationship with him and love him
Mm-hmm.
before he died. And I'm glad that he apologized to me for everything he did to me. And I forgave him. And that helped me to heal. That helped me to heal because you can go on for the rest of life and just hold on to things and be angry and bitter, and
Right.
you want people to just apologize. That's
Right.
all you need is an apology, and you may never get it. So
Right.
when I started going to therapy, and everything, and I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna get this apology from him. He did all this, and everybody else did what they did to me. They're not gonna apologize. They're not even gonna acknowledge that they did it. But
Right.
I know, we know that what happened. So
Mm-hmm.
I leaned on God and therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what has gotten me to this point where I am right now.
Right.
You know,
Yes. You,
so
you have, unfortunately, a story that many of us have. I too dealt with child abuse uh, by two of my parents' friends. There was abuse and verbal and physical abuse in my home. In addition to that, growing up, lost my virginity to sexual assault, and then started having a series of abusive relationships. And so, your story, unfortunately, is shared by many. And I'm just so grateful that you're alive to be able to share your story, and then also to say, prayers to the man that chose to listen to you and call the police, because that you could have died that day if you didn't. And just, the fact that you were strong enough, despite the threats, to say, I need help, I need the police, to run away, to ask your cousins to get you out of there and stuff like that, because those kind of life threats is the reason why so many are still in abusive relationships, because they're afraid that person is going to carry out that threat.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm glad that you were strong enough to get away from that situation and to ask for help and to get the help, and to protect yourself, because they use those threats to scare victims into not leaving.
Right.
And so the fact that you safely did what you had to do to get out of that situation is something that a lot of people need to hear. So what I wanted to ask you, when it comes to your story and you shared it with your daughter, and your family, how does your daughter feel about it now, with you sharing your story, knowing that it's about about her dad? And how did your family react to you starting to share your story publicly?
Well, as far as my daughter, my kids are my number one supporter, especially her. All of them are. I have 3 children, and they are my number one supporter. But she, she's like, "Oh, mom," you might see her under some of my posts.
Okay, that's great. Yeah.
She definitely, she definitely supports me, and she come to some of my events, to some of the monologues that I do with Queen and things like that. She definitely is very supportive of me, despite the fact that it was her father that did it. She is very supportive of me, and as far as my family is concerned, I would say that I'm the black sheep. Okay, and I don't mind.
Right.
And I'm also the change maker, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
a chain breaker.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I spoke up, the molestation stopped.
Okay.
Because yeah,
Right.
it literally stopped, because it was running rampant. It was running rampant, and I was the only one stood up and said,
Right.
because in my family, where I come from, our family was one of the richest families in where I'm from, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm putting dirt on the family name, and how dare you tell, the
Right.
family, what happens in the house stays in the house, and
Right.
those type of things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-mm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And unfortunately, in the Black community or minority community, because I know it's the same in the Spanish Latino communities, that what happens in the house stays in the house, and you are threatened and silenced not to share what's going on in the home, and then you have other children in the home that are being abused and neglected and so forth, and then it becomes a bloodline of abuse going on, because no one's speaking up and no one's sharing and no one's saying anything. And so many children have been hurt as a result of the former generation not saying anything.
Right.
Not saying anything at all.
Yeah. Well, I chose differently. And it took some time, because that's not something that you can just, because for one, as a 5-year-old, how are you supposed to know any better?
Right. Exactly.
Like, you don't know what's going on. You think this is normal behavior at a certain point,
Right.
until you grow up and start thinking, I wonder if any other little girls have these secrets like me.
Right.
You
Right.
know, if
Mm-hmm.
anybody else is going through these things that I'm going through, and you
Mm-hmm.
realizing that this doesn't, it doesn't feel right or seem right, but you really get to the age and to the point where you know this is not right.
Right.
This is not right.
Right.
And that's how it went with me as far as my family was concerned. That was, but yeah, it was a lot. And like I said, I thank God that I still have all of my faculties, that I still am able to help other people.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And we're one thing about this tour, the whole purpose of this tour is for survivors like you and I to share, so that someone, just like Mandre said, so that someone hears and gets the help that they need, or someone hears and gets the strength that they need to leave.
Right.
Or someone hears and they learn of resources or supports or something like that that's out there that they didn't know anything about.
Right.
And so for you, I know that you helped with passing a couple of bills. Tell us about those.
Actually, it was 3 bills. Excuse me. The very first one was, I get them confused because I'm not as young as I used to be. So.
Understood.
But the very first one was, if you're renting a house or an apartment and you are a victim of domestic violence, you can break your lease without any consequences.
Okay.
The other one was, if there's any child that is in the household and there's domestic abuse in the presence of that child, then that's considered a felony.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The third one was the strangulation bill.
Mm-hmm.
And the strangulation bill, coincidentally, I have the little story to say about that as well. But the strangulation bill was just passed as well. And that one is crazy because even after my domestic abuse situation with my daughter's father, although we are advocates and we're this and that and other, it doesn't mean that it can't happen to us again.
Right.
And I ended up again in a situation where I was literally being strangled.
Mm.
And when I was being strangled, I'm thinking to myself, I'm fighting back now, because before I fight back.
Right. Exactly.
Back. I'm
Right.
fighting for my life, literally. And as I'm being strangled, I'm saying to myself, I can't die like this. I helped to get this bill passed.
Right. Right.
But this is what I'm thinking to myself. I can't die like this, and I'm fighting for my life.
Exactly.
Of me, I did get him off of me, and that situation was, and that's it. But yeah, those are the 3 bills that I contributed to. But we have plenty more that we get ready to work on, because we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, we definitely do. I really love the bills that you did get passed, especially when it comes to the children. And children are so affected by domestic violence taking place in the home, much more than maybe the abuser or victim knows. The last what was that? I believe our community conversations that we had last week, someone spoke about the fact that they were a child survivor of domestic violence. And I asked them, I said, well, what does that mean? And he said, well, the abuse was never towards me, like your daughter. The abuse, she never suffered abuse, but
Right.
the fact that he was in the home and witnessed the abuse, he was also a victim as well. And so just because the children are not being hit or anything like that does not mean that the children are not direct victims of domestic violence. So I appreciate you getting that bill passed. Is that just in Maryland, or is that a national bill?
It's just in Maryland for now that I know of, but I'm going to do some research to see if any other states have got it. But for now, I believe it's just in Maryland.
Okay. Well, that is an amazing thing, because I think that adds to the consequences that abusers need to have, and will hopefully give abusers something to think about before they put their hands on someone or they abuse someone. Is that these things are in place now in Maryland, that if I abuse someone in front of my children or their children, that's a felony count. That, if I have a home, and this is so let me back up. When I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, it was because I was raped, and by someone that I entrusted to, actually was working for me, doing an event, and I allowed him to use my couch, to sleep for the night after the event. And instead of him, just coming in from the event and going to bed, he decided that he was going to come on to me. And I basically let him know, like, not basically, I did tell him, no, that's not what you're here for. I paid you, to work an event, so forth and so on. I'm not interested. And he ended up raping me that night. It was pretty violent. I had to go to the doctors. I had to get stitches anally, because that was the only way that he was able to pin me down, was on my stomach. I put up a good fight. And then after, he started stalking me.
I went through that too.
Yeah. So it was like, not only did you rape me, but now you're stalking me as well. I did report it, but that was the last straw for me. I'm from the Maryland area, and I had so much trauma that happened in Maryland that my parents moved down to Charlotte 2 years before me. And I literally, after I saw him sitting outside my building, watching me go into the building, I went to work the next day. I had a great job at GSA. I was full-time, making really good money. And I just told them, I'm sorry, but I have to move. And I told them what happened. I was gone within 2 weeks. I relocated and moved to Charlotte. But what I remember out of the whole ordeal was that it was the power that abusers, or that they feel at that moment, that they have the control, the power, the violation, the and so forth. It's the power that they feel that they hold in that moment.
Right.
They don't feel like they're going to have any consequences.
Exactly.
So when we have laws like this and bills like this that are in place, that is going to add not just to your domestic violence or assault and battery charge, but now you're going to have a felony. And now, so forth and so on. That helps. Hopefully that gives someone a second, like, okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Unfortunately, it doesn't for everyone.
Right.
But hopefully it gives some kind of pause, a little bit, hopefully enough to save someone, give someone that extra time to get out of that relationship. So I wish that was, in effect 14 years ago, when my children were 6 months old, but they witnessed abuse the last, they're 17 now, and they've witnessed the abuse that I've had to deal with, and how it's affected them. Right. And so I really think it's important that you got that pass, because it's so important for people to understand that even if your child is not getting hit, or the verbal and emotional abuse is not directed to them, they're still being abused along with you.
Yeah, that's the truth. And that's what we endured, all of my brothers and sisters and I, up until I was 10. That's when we ran, and we ended up coming to DC, to the House of Ruth, to live. And we had to change our names and everything. But we that's why I said I'm a second generation domestic abuse survivor, because, I grew up watching my daddy put my mom in the hospital, break, like, things like that. And, it was painful. And then you're a child. So, you love your dad, and then you of course, you love your mom, and you're put in a position where like, oh my God, like you don't want to have to choose, but you just want it to stop.
Yeah.
So I would say like, I wish mom would just leave because daddy's not good for her.
I said the same thing.
Yeah, daddy's not good for her. So just leave, you know,
Yeah.
and and eventually that's what happened. And we, we moved on, but it's a lot. Like I had mentioned earlier, I said at 11, 14, and 26, I was raped. The same thing you went through at the age of 10, I was raped as well. The same by somebody. Well, actually, I didn't know the guy. It was somebody my sister. Oh God, that it was somebody that a family member invited to our house that I did not know that raped me, brutally raped me with my family member in the next room, and nobody came to my rescue.
Mm.
It got to the point where after they finished raping me, they left, and I didn't say anything because my sister told me to open the door. She had company coming over. Can we bleep that out? The sister part? Or maybe not? Okay. Well,
It's live. I'm sorry.
all right, but okay, it wasn't her fault that he did it. But at
Right.
any he came, I opened the door for him, he came in, and he was sitting there waiting for her to come out, and I'm sitting there watching the Flintstones. I'm 11. So I guess he was looking at me. I don't know. I wasn't paying him any mind, but he got up and just ripped my shorts off and brutally raped me to the point where I I was sitting in a tub of blood, and I could not tell because my sister was going to get in trouble, you know, and I was going to get in trouble because I opened the door.
Mm.
I never went to the hospital.
Oh God.
I just literally did what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I did what I do. And then, again, it happened at 14 with someone else. And then it happened at 26, just like you said, with somebody that you entrusted that was supposed to be a friend. Remember the Million Woman March? I don't know if you remember that.
Yes.
I was
Yes.
in Philly. That's where I was raised in Philly. And that's where it happened at. And all of my friends from DC and Virginia were coming to come to my house in Philly
Mm-hmm.
for the march. And, my friend, he was like, well, I'm going to stop over so I can see you for a minute. I ain't going to hold you up. I said, I have company coming. I'm cleaning. So maybe another day. He was like, just let me come and see you for a minute. I'm like, all right, okay. So he comes over and he's sitting there and he's talking to me while I'm moving around, cleaning and everything. Next thing you know, he says, give me a kiss. We never been that, no
Yeah.
kiss. We weren't those type of friends. So he gets up and he said, give me a kiss. And I said, no.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and then from that point on, he raped me. And after he raped me, I ended up going into a seizure. Luckily, my mother lived right next door to me, right next door. And I had enough in me to make it to her door. As soon as she opened the door, I passed out and started having a seizure. But I did get rushed to the emergency room. This man, you are that selfish. You are that self-centered that because somebody told you no, you're going to take it and you risk your livelihood. You quit your job
Mm-hmm.
and everything just to do that.
Yeah. And they don't care what the risks are. It's all about what they want in the moment, and they don't. Most, probably 99% of rapists, I'm sure, don't think about it before they do. And if whatever thoughts they have are not it for your benefit, they're not healthy thoughts. If anything, they're just thinking about how to hurt you and not what the effects are going to be. And that it's just, this is why it's so important for us to speak up, because I found out, literally, I ran away. I did report the last rape to the police. I was taken to the hospital, by the person that I was seeing at the time. And I ran. So honestly, the police officers couldn't even get in contact with me for a few weeks because I just didn't want to be bothered by it. But because was raped when I was 19, 20, by a friend of mine's brother that I had grown up with. And I pressed charges then. And basically, because we had known each other and had dated very briefly before, they tried to say that there was no evidence. But it was a record. It was a public record. And so it's so important for us to speak up.
Yes.
To speak up, because I found out like 2 years later that the guy that raped me, which forced me to relocate, that he did it to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we have to speak up. I wasn't able to save her, but between the two of us, we were able to save future women from being assaulted, because he did have the charges were pursued against him. So we have to speak up. We don't want another woman to go through what both of us have gone through. We don't want our daughters to go through what we've gone through. My children are very aware of my story. I wrote about the assault in my first book, Reality Check. And it's just so important for us to talk and speak up and be the change makers. Use our story, use our voices to bring about change, because we as survivors are the best ones to help with writing the laws, with changing the policies, with creating programs, because we've been through it. And so that's the whole purpose. That's the whole purpose of the tour. That's your purpose. That's my purpose. And we have to continue. We have to continue, because the world is not getting any better. How do I know you said that you've gone into the schools, which is something that we would like to do on the tour as well. How do people receive your story? How do children or students receive your story when you're going into the schools talking about it?
I've talked to just about every age, like the what was the name of that school? Forestville Military Academy, which is closed now. I spoke there a couple times, and they had from like kindergarten, they had all the way up to like 12th grade, I believe. But I've spoken, I have to tone it down for each age. But what happened, what I did notice, the loudest and the most disruptive child that was in that room was the one that was hurting the most. And this young man, I'm never going to forget him. It was at H.G. Woodson, and he was being rude, like over talking me, laughing, and I kindly, politely looked at him and said, I'm not being disrespectful. I would appreciate it if you would.
Right.
And he, they was like, ooh, you know how kids are. And then they, laughed. But he did. I started getting into the story. And then after I was done, he waited and he came to me with tears in his eyes. And he said to me, can I have your card? Because my mother is going through what you went through. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I'm saying. Like, don't be so quick to judge. Like when I was growing up, they would say, oh, little hot tail little girl. So
yeah.
Don't judge. Don't judge. If you don't know what that little girl went through that made her turn out that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that young man, his anger is not for nothing.
Right.
He was the loudest one in the class, and he was the most obnoxious one. But I already peeped him, and I already know you're hurting.
Right.
You're hurting. And by the time I got finished talking to him, I connected with his mom and everything, and we are still connected to this day. And that's what it's about for me. That's what it's about for me, because what is the purpose?
Right.
What is the purpose of all of this if it's not to help uplift somebody or to help somebody
right.
prevent these children from being sexually assaulted, molested, raped, domestic violence. I want to prevent them from having to go through whatever I am.
Yeah. I found the bill about the child welfare. It looks like it is law 3601.1. So I put that in the comments if people
Okay.
want to read it. So I did find that. I'm looking for the other bills, but I do know that you sent it to me. So I'm going to make sure that I push that out there. So we talked about, sexual assault. We've talked about domestic violence. I know that you are an author as well. Tell us about your book and what is your book about, and how can we get your book?
Okay. My first book is a bestseller. It is Moments in Her Story, like history, moments in her story from pain to purpose. So that's the name of my first book, and it's a bestseller. It's on Amazon. And the last book that I did, I actually did 3 books, but I really don't mention my first book, but the last book that I did was called In the Midst of Chaos, Home is Sometimes the Worst Place to Be. And that book, myself and several authors, the main author is my mentor, Mildred Muhammad, the DC sniper's wife, my mentor. I did that book with her in 2013, October 31st, actually. And that book is really doing well as well. So, and that can be found on Amazon also. I'm working on my book right now, and hopefully it'll be out October of this year.
Nice. Tell us about the Her Story. Is that an anthology, or tell us more about that?
It's basically all of them are collaboratives. All of them are actually collaboratives. It's all of us sharing, each person sharing their story, breaking down their story. 12 of us that did the book, and one of the people that were in the book was actually, her husband was a famous wrestler.
Okay.
Yes. And her story was vicious.
Wow.
Her story was vicious. And that's what I'm saying. Like we think that, people, just because people have money, and no. It
Right.
doesn't matter how much money you have, with race, with color, with creed, with anything. Domestic violence and sexual assault across the board happens to everyone.
Right.
And we just trying to do what we need to do to try to get a wrap on it. So we can
Yes, I totally understand that. So what I would like to, so you are part of the Earn Your Wings Maryland team, and you all are going to be focusing on human trafficking. But I also know that your team lead, Natalie, wants to also include domestic violence. And it fits, because we know that domestic violence can sometimes include trafficking, can include sexual assault, drug abuse, strangulation, guns. So she wants to cover those things. And so what we had spoken to you about is, just putting together a roundtable of organizations that are willing to talk about the state of the DMV area, and kind of what is going on there, and how we can, come together as a community to bring about new laws or reformed laws, or even adding services and supports that might be needed for human trafficking victims and domestic violence victims. For you, if there was someone that was interested in doing something like going to get a bill passed or a law passed or something like that, when it comes to crime reduction and crime prevention, what would be your suggestion to them on that process, on starting that process?
Well, myself, I literally went to an app, and I spoke there, I shared my story, and I knocked on those senators' doors. As that's where it starts at. That's where you let them hear, whatever it is that you need or want done. We have to go and talk to them. And believe it or not, a lot of them open their doors to me and had me sit down, and then wrote letters to me thanking me for coming, to talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
So I know it may seem like, okay, the Senate, no, yeah, they will. You can go there and literally talk to these senators. As a matter of fact, one of the senators that I know that actually works on the base that I work at, he is going to be speaking as well as myself next Thursday at the Take Back the Night at
Mm-hmm.
Prince George's Hospital in Largo.
Mm-hmm.
I can have a discussion with him. He's definitely somebody that I'm going to try to get in his ear and see what how he can help us as
Mm-hmm.
too. So yeah.
Yeah, so that is something, again, that the tour is going to be working on. We're putting together a document of what works for victims, what barriers exist for victims while they're on their healing journey, and then what is needed. So we started those conversations on April 10th with the North Carolina Crime Victims Week events, and we're going to be continuing these conversations on May 20th with the South Carolina team as well. And we've invited elected officials, the mayor, sheriff, mental health organizations, therapists, and so forth. And so these are the conversations that are going to be taking place on the tour as well, with individuals like you who have already been hitting the ground and making change happen, but then also including people who want to get involved, who have a voice, who want to get things done and might not know how to go about it. So what is on the horizon for you right now? What are you working on right now? And how can somebody support you in your efforts right now?
Okay. Well, I have my nonprofit, which is called Paint to Purpose. And I started, I'm collecting, I'm trying to get sponsors to do different things, to donate clothing, new and barely used clothing for women and children. I am, of course, going around in schools and everything, speaking and things like that. I'm rebranding my organization. I'm rebranding it. So myself and my mentor, she's helping me. I've started I just did my new website. It's up and running. It's paintopurpose.com. So I can put that in the chat. I can type that, but yeah. And you can find everything. Wait a minute. What did I do? Okay. Okay. But yeah, it's paintopurpose.com, and I'll make sure that you get all that information. And actually my website has everything on it. All of my events, where you can reach me at, where you can purchase my book there, and everything. It basically has everything on there.
Okay, that's great. So when it comes to the tour, what was the reason that you joined the tour?
I joined the tour because I thought it was just such a brilliant idea. But it was such a brilliant idea. And it was a good way of everybody coming together, like the different states and everybody working as a team. It's powerful.
Yes.
It's powerful. And I feel like anything that that has something to do with my purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's like, okay, well, you don't pay this and pay that. And I do get paid to speak and everything like that. But certain things, if you feel it in your heart and your soul that you are passionate about it, it's not even necessarily about just, that. So this is one of those things that I chose we're going to go with this and we're going to do what we have to do because it's an awesome idea. And I thank you again for doing this. I thank you again for doing it.
I thank you for being a part of it because I feel like we are going to be able to learn some things from you when it comes to what our goals are. And we have somebody right here who's making laws and getting bills passed and all that good stuff. So we have a good mentor for those of us who have not been through that process before. So I really appreciate you doing that. And I also appreciate you saying, as a speaker, I've been speaking for probably since college. And even though sometimes, you know, I will ask for like travel expenses or something like that, this is not a for-profit business. Sharing my story is not a for-profit business. So one thing about this tour is the testimonies, the transparency, and the genuine desire to be a part of something bigger than me, something bigger than you. Exactly. And it's about the community. So would we like to make money every time we share a story? Of course we would. Right. However, that's not always feasible, and that doesn't always happen. But I promise, every single time I walk away from an event, I feel as if I accomplished something by sharing. And so, you know, when it comes to advocacy, there was a point where I kind of stepped away for a couple of months because I was seeing some things that just didn't look right and didn't sit well with me. So having partners in this and having advocates and survivors that are willing to share their story and the sincereness of it, yes, is so important. Because when we're out here in the community and we're sharing our stories, people can feel when we're being genuine and sincere and open. And they can also see when a lot of times people can read right through BS. Right. And so I always, when I'm talking to new advocates or new survivors who are sharing their story, I always tell them, always be authentic in your story. Always own your own story. No one can write your story for you. No one can tell you how to share your story, but let your story be your own and make sure that you're stating facts. Then that way nobody can question what you're saying. However, you also don't want to share your story in fear of, you know, your family turning against you or someone questioning your story and so forth. So being authentic, being truthful, and stating facts is important. But those people over there that don't want you to share your story because it probably involves them, those people over there are saying you're sharing too much, because I hear that a lot. You're sharing too much. That's too much for, you know, that's too much for you to be sharing. It's my story to share.
Exactly.
It's my story to share. And so I'm just forever grateful. We have, I want to say about 55 partners now, including survivor advocates, organizations, sponsors, partners, artists, poets, all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's gone way more than I imagined. And we've only just been to one state so far. So just imagine by December, how huge this will be and how many stories are going to get told. Right. And how many people we're going to be able to help.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
It is. That is what it's about. That is what it's about. So how do you feel? Do you feel that you were able to share your story the way you wanted to share your story tonight?
I share my story the way I normally share my story, because the truth of the matter is I've been sharing my story since 2012. And I was thinking, maybe I should just add something a little. And then when I left, I said, why did you do that?
Yeah.
You know, you've been sharing, it's your story that you share the way that it actually is.
Exactly.
But you want to be, you know, like do something a little different.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
Story.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what I did today. And I thought about it, I slept on it, and I said, I have to talk to her. And I went because I didn't feel, I felt it was an injustice because I did not give everything. And I normally give, you know, and that's what I want to do. I want to make sure that someone gets something out of the story.
Yes.
And that's the whole purpose of it all right now.
It is.
Of it, period.
Right. And not to say that adding some pieces to your story is a bad thing, because it's not. Right. I know if you've been sharing since 2012, I'm sure you don't say the exact same words in the exact same way every single time. And that is okay.
Yeah.
Because you really do have to look at who's in front of you, who
Right.
your audience is, who you're talking to, what age they are, and you might have to do that. But at the end of the day, as long as it is authentic and as long as it is factual, then your delivery sometimes has to be tailored to who's in front of you, and that's okay.
Oh yeah, always.
Right.
It always has to be. Like I said, I've spoken in front of kindergartners.
Yeah.
To 12th grade, you know.
Yeah.
You have to adjust it. So
you do, and that doesn't take away from your story at all. It just adds to the fact that you're able to talk to different groups, and you're able to educate different groups, and you're able to do this and continue sharing your truth with anybody that that you're in front of,
is willing to listen. I'm in the grocery store. When I get a feeling, and God, I'm going to say this, I don't care where I'm at.
Right.
I will start a conversation.
Yeah.
It end up being, like a friendship.
Yeah.
I don't. There's some will say, just Rene, nudge me.
Yeah.
She needs to hear. She needs to hear your story.
Exactly. Exactly.
It never fails. It never. It's always like, oh my God, you're not gonna believe I went.
Yeah.
It fails. Whenever I get a feeling, I listen to it. At my spirit, and it never fails.
Yeah, you never know who you're going to meet, whether it's the grocery store, the McDonald's drive-through, the library. You never know who you're going to meet.
Yeah.
And you never know who needs to hear what you have to say.
Yes. And it doesn't matter whether it's at the McDonald's or whether it's the janitor or whether it's the whoever.
Exactly.
Everybody needs help, and everybody, like I said, there's no exceptions to the rule. There's no. It doesn't. It doesn't matter. You know?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Rene. I appreciate you reaching out to me and being honest and saying, look, I got to do that again. I appreciated it. I completely understood it. And I didn't notice, and I'm sure nobody else noticed until you told me.
It was like an inner thing.
Yeah. So, but I appreciate that because you wanted to speak your truth and you wanted it to be delivered the right way. Right. And that's all we can do. That's all we can do is deliver the message and hope that somebody is inspired by it and it helps somebody.
Definitely. Yeah. It's about. But thank you so much for having me again. And
you are so welcome. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for being a part of the tour. I cannot wait to see you in Maryland to personally come and give you some hugs, and just to really continue raising awareness in Maryland. The tour is also going to be in South Carolina, DC, Texas, New York, Virginia, did I say Louisiana? So we're traveling, girl. We're traveling, and we need to continue hearing these stories, these powerful stories on the Earn Your Wings tour. So thank you so much, Rene, for taking time out tonight, for reaching out and wanting to set the record straight. And you did just that. And I appreciate it. I really and truly do. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate you. And you have a good night.
Good night. Thank you, everyone. Rene, tell everybody how they can find you.
It's Rene Michelle, Rene with the accent, Michelle on all platforms. Also, Pain to Purpose. I'll put it in the Earn Your Wings page. You can find my website there. My books, everything's on my website.
Nice. Okay. So I am putting her Facebook link. I've already put her website. So ain't no excuse. I didn't tag her in this post too. So it's no excuse. So please, if you're watching right now and it's catching the tail end, please take a moment to watch, share with your family, because this is family friendly. All of our episodes are family friendly because it's not just for adults. This information is for children as well, as young as they can understand. Yes. We have to educate our children about all things sexual assault, all things domestic violence, and all things crime that affects our homes. So thank you so much, everyone. And I hope everyone has a great night. Be safe.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.
Bye.